Hello, Henry.
Hey Hayley, how you doing?
Yes, good, thank you. I am very excited to talk about this topic. I think it's going to be really interesting and one to really get the dads out there listening. I think men's health is something that is really important to talk about. And I know this topic was kind of suggested to me in terms of what to cover it on our podcast. And I don't know if you've ever thought very much about your dad bod, Henry. I'm sure you've never had to be too concerned about that eating healthily as a chef.
It's a constant work in progress.
But I thought it might be nice to kind of share with you and the listeners just things that I hear about in clinic, the questions I get asked, and just to kind of go through some of the myths and also the facts about what is actually important for men to concentrate on so you avoid the kind of pitfalls and you can get the best out of your body, not just how it looks, but the physical, the mental health side of things as well. We'll dive
Right.
straight in. So, and then on that kind of theme of men's strength and abs of steel, we can talk about some of the sort of best cut like kind of cooking utensils and also pots, pans, that sort of thing in the kitchen, because you mentioned that on a previous podcast and I really
Yes.
wanted to explore that further.
Yeah,
So
great. We can
yeah.
we can talk all about all you want.
So, starting off, something that I often hear in clinic is that people come in with an injury, and it might be commonly around the neck, around the knee, around the lower back, and sometimes into the tendon areas. So, things like the Achilles tendon. And this is something really commonly seen in men because the effects of declining testosterone. So we talk about estrogen in females, that declining, but we also see that happening in men, and your kind of testosterone levels start to decline at the age of 30, and it becomes more and more pronounced sort of by the age of 40, and then further into your 50s as well. And it's something like 1 to 2% decline from the age of 40 onwards. So with that in mind, your testosterone is there as a sort of protective function in terms of it's a quite sort of anti-inflammatory. It has lots of different roles in terms of how it can impact on your muscle strength. So it's there to try and keep you as strong as possible, like keep that kind of man physique for reproduction. And that's the kind of whole reason why you have testosterone. So it helps to maintain your muscle strength. So as we decline in testosterone, your muscles get a lot weaker, and it can also impact on your bone density as well, because your bone density starts to change as you get through the sort of later years. It's a little bit slower than what we've talked about in the female body. So roughly from the age of about 50 in men, you will start to see a decline in bone density. But we need to be considerate about our bone density in men, especially if, in your younger years, or if younger men have sort of been using sort of steroid-based medications, or using them at the gym, that sort of thing, like the oral glycerine or any other kind of steroid-based medications, then it does impact on your bone density, and you might suffer with that later on in life. So they don't always think about that though when they're kind of pumping the steroid
Yeah.
and trying to get your muscles as big as possible. I'm sure people won't be thinking about the impact on their bone density. They'll think, oh, well, I'll just deal with that when I'm older. But it's really
Yes.
important that you do. And it can, you might start to find that you become a little bit more tired. That can be a kind of sign of lower testosterone. And you will also see a kind of stiffening through the collagen and the tendons, which then leaves you a little bit more prone to injury risk. So this is
Okay.
another reason why it can impact on your recovery after exercise, and the importance of what type of exercise you might want to do. And, I can sometimes, 9 times out of 10, will have somebody who's trying to do some exercise, and they might have had, a few days before that, having some alcohol, gone out for a night out. They'll
Okay.
have a drink, and alcohol plays havoc on your tendons and also on
Okay.
your muscles. So that's what we commonly see. So we want to try and avoid these pitfalls. Or guys will cram in sometimes exercise in a short space of time. And, as we do get older, with the declining testosterone, we need to kind of monitor how are you allowing adequate kind of recovery periods, because otherwise there are different phases within our tendons and in our muscles, and they go through a bit of a reactive phase if we overload them too fast. And that's not nice because that's an acute response that our body does to overload. And then if we keep doing that to the body, you end up causing quite an inflammatory tendon, and it becomes quite a grumbly tendon. So the body tries to repair itself by laying down larger protein molecules, and you'll have something called neovascularization. So the tendon swells, you get blood supply growing into the tendons, and it becomes like just a bit of a disorganized, not very good quality tendon. And then that way you just sort of think, well, okay, you can't load it as well. It'll be more painful, and it won't be as strong. So then you leave yourself at risk of, rupturing a tendon potentially, and having a chronic issue through the tendon, and it becomes more
Yeah.
degenerative with time. So we want
Okay.
to make sure we're kind of really respecting the body and what we're doing, but we do need to subject our body to loading, but in the right way. And what areas are we focusing on? Okay, so so coming back to you, Henry, would you say you have any of those experiences yourself, or if you don't mind sharing, or shall I talk
I
more
guess
about what I?
no. I mean, I guess I'm a dad, and I have a body, and whether it's an official dad bod, I don't quite know. Yeah, I guess probably with me and my health, I probably think about like my kids' health and my wife's health, and I probably don't think about mine so much, or I don't worry about it, so to speak. And but I guess as I have had a family and getting a little bit older, they're still not too old. I definitely feel whether it's like the weight is harder to shift or I feel a bit tighter. You kind of if I do exercise and push a bit hard, that kind of recovery time can feel you leave me feeling a bit sore. And then I'm probably like my job is quite sedentary, so I sit at an office, I drive to work, I sleep in a bed, so I'm probably you know hunched up and not moving as much as I would like. And then I don't know, probably a combination of probably drink a little bit too much alcohol. I do try and not drink every day, but I do quite like beer. I'm not going to lie. And but then there's probably been times where I've overindulged on the weekend, say, and and then yeah, that kind of that recovery period can be quite tricky. But I'm actually slightly suffering from a sore neck. Had a bit of a heavy weekend 2 weekends ago, and I did some press ups and sit ups straight out of bed, and probably I don't know, maybe I was a bit dehydrated, and something went, and it's been quite painful. So I've had to. I've been to the chiropractor a couple of times. I'm very fortunate. My brother's a chiropractor, so he's quite a handy person to have in a family. And but then I also had a sports massage, and that sounds really nice. Hadn't had like a proper massage for like outside of like a hotel where they just kind of I don't know stroke you for a bit. But I'm not really a big fan of those. But this was like proper painful kind of like hot stones. I think she did some dry cupping. Anyway, all sorts of stuff. But it definitely loosened me up and I feel better. But it's still yeah. I guess it's that reality for me of like I'm not as young as I used to be, and maybe you have to think about things a bit differently. But I mean, are they kind of like normal? As as you enter into your 40s, you kind of these all things to expect as a dad.
Well, they're things that we can see, but not something that you should have to put up with. So
No.
sometimes we look deeper into some of the risk factors. So you took the example of you woke up and it was suddenly there with your neck pain, and this is really
Yeah.
common. But what we have to do
Okay.
is look before the time of injury. So basically, what happens or builds up the weeks or months leading up to the injury. Is it that, you're doing the same repetitive exercise without stretching sufficiently? Talking about the declining testosterone. I know you're so young and healthy, Henry, but as the testosterone declines, it would cause more of this issue with the muscles and the stiffening and the
Okay.
weakness to the tendons. And that's because testosterone has impacts on tendons because it supports collagen synthesis, and that's why it
Okay.
works. So obviously as it declines, it's going to become a stiffer area in the muscles and tendons. So if you are kind of not stretching adequately, or you're doing the same exercise and your body's kind of used to you doing the same thing, but you're not progressively incrementing your strength to match what's happening in the physiology of your body.
Yeah.
Or, it could even be things like, I know obviously you're a chef, everyone listening knows you're a chef. So it
Yeah.
could be that your working postures are contributing to it. It could be mattresses. We often talk about in clinic, how good is your bed? Have you, and the amount of people who will sometimes say, I've got the same mattress and I've had it for 20 years, but I don't really want to, I
Yeah.
can't afford to buy a new one.
Yeah.
Which I
Yeah.
understand mattresses are expensive. However, our back, and if you think of how long you're in the bed for, 8 hours a night at least, you want to make sure your joints and your muscles and everything are fully supported. And then
Yes.
on top of that, your pillow position. Are you sleeping with too many pillows? Are you sleeping with too? I often it's the opposite to women, because men will often say, "Well, I sleep on one really thin pillow because my wife has them all."
Yeah.
Something
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I always hear.
That's so true. I got the two crap ones. Yeah, my wife's got the premium ones, and then she sleeps on one, and the other one is kind of nearby, and I've got the I've got the dregs. Yeah, actually, I've got a really our mattress is we replaced it a couple of years ago, and it's actually really comfy. But I found out that the mattress room before that was my mother-in-law's one that she discarded after sleeping on it for like 10 years. I was just like, we obviously when we got married, we didn't have any money, and I still don't have any money, but even less then. And anyway, so we do have a new mattress, and that has made sleeping so much nicer. But I probably haven't. I need to invest in a better pillow, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So you probably, and what you should look at, because if I had a pound for every time someone says to me, "What's the best pillow?" And I wish I could make them, because that would be
Okay,
ideal. But basically, you need to
sounds like a
consider.
business opportunity, Hayley.
I know, I think so. And it sounds it. So what you're really looking for is the kind of distance from the outside edge of your shoulder to your kind of ear position. So if
Yeah,
you're quite broad, and everyone's different sizes, obviously. If you're quite broad, you might need, maybe one bigger pillow or two pillows to kind of fill the gap, and so that you can try and keep your spine in alignment. And then it depends on what you put that pillow on. If you're going to put it on a softer mattress, then you might not need so much of a pillow elevation, because you're going to
yeah,
be, slightly more curved through
sunk
the lower
in.
back.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, more sunk in. Whereas if you've got really good stability through the hip and pelvic area and the knees and ankles, then you want to kind of offload the neck with the right level, so everything's in a nice line.
gotcha.
So it's not something that's so straightforward, but
No,
something to consider. And then on top of that, how not just looking at the neck, but looking at, if we have an injury, we often in physio talk about joints above and below, and that can be two joints above or below the injured area. So what's going
okay.
on around the shoulders, and what's
Yeah, yeah,
going
yeah.
on around the elbows and the hands, and are people having symptoms related to that? Pins and needles, numbness, any kind of muscle loss of strength, any altered sensation in the hands or in the legs if it's a lower limb injury. So that's what you're kind of considering. Have you had it before? Is it something that you're kind of masking? It gets better after a couple of weeks, but then,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
4 months later it
I think
comes back.
I've had like I think I've mentioned before, like my lower back is, I've had problems with it, and I've done quite a lot of Pilates and stuff. So I'm quite conscious of, when I'm doing exercise or things, or whether it's some digging in the garden, to kind of like make sure I'm bending the knees, because I know that that can flare up. But I've never really had neck pain. And but when I had the massage, she pinpointed my shoulder blade with a big old knot, and she was like, she found it fairly quickly, and then started, working at it. And which obviously was quite painful, but I was there to, have it sorted out. And then she was then talking through like, oh, why this might have happened. And she said, she mentioned things like probably, being dehydrated, and like that build up over months. And then sometimes it just takes an event like, you've you've possibly not been drinking much water, and maybe a bit too much alcohol. And I was like, oh yeah, this is exactly what happened. I had a boozy weekend, didn't drink much water, jumped out of bed. Right, that's it. I'm gonna, get Monday going. Did a lot of press ups, and then, yeah, wallop. It punished me. So, yeah,
Yeah, and we see it a lot, because people will go for beer or two, and then they'll try and run like a 10K race or a half marathon, and
yeah, you've said before, yeah, yeah. I should
but
have listened.
yeah, but you leave yourself, if you do dehydrate yourselves, and you've got this kind of declining testosterone, but you've also got the issue of having had alcohol. We know the
Yes,
direct impact on causing sort of micro tears, and sort of you're more at risk of a tear as well in the muscles.
yes, Yes.
So yeah, you don't really want to be going down that route, and at least keeping
No.
hydrated and around it definitely
Yeah. Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So rotator cuff injuries, so that's shoulder injuries, is quite common in men, especially around the ages of sort of 30 to 45, 50. So
Okay.
this is not just guys will often do bicep curls, they'll do triceps. I go, well, I do all this stuff in the gym. And then I show them an exercise that requires maybe some external, I can't do it here in my picture, but external rotation of the shoulder, doing resisted exercises into different positions of the shoulder. That's not
Okay.
your classic up and down with your
Yes.
elbows. And
Yes.
all of a sudden they're shaking, or
Yes.
or doing press ups. As physios, we would suggest that you do a lot of upper back strengthening. That might include some of the postural muscles that you've mentioned. You probably had a knot in your rhomboid muscles, which are the muscles between the shoulder blades. And
That's
then
where it was.
and then you want to work the muscles sort of underneath the scapula, which is your shoulder
Okay.
blade, and above it. And then all the stability around the shoulder. Now, you'll probably be working quite a lot of your global muscles anyway in your job. So if a man is quite mobile and active, you've got a physical job, you might be engaging more of the global muscles and not so much the stability postural muscles. You might let your
Okay.
posture slip a little bit. So
Yes.
your larger global muscles try to kick in to compensate. And that's why it's a really good idea for guys to do more stability proprioceptive exercise,
Okay.
not only plyometric exercise, but doing things that are not just your traditional resistant exercise. You need to do a whole recipe or a whole kind of combination so you get variety. And that way you can help to prevent problems.
So what kind of exercises could that be? What would
Yeah.
be a good
So
example?
Yeah, so we always want to make sure we get things from different categories. So aerobic exercise, so that might be that you like your running, cycling,
Okay.
swimming,
Okay. Yeah.
fast walking, one or more of those, making sure you get your 150 minutes a week of aerobic exercise.
Yeah.
Then 2 to 3 sessions a week should be resistive exercise. So that
Yeah.
might be, some of your, like as people say, it's an arms day, a legs day, an abs day,
Yes.
whatever. You can
Yes.
continue
Yeah.
with those. You should then be looking at really good core stability. And so that might be like your Pilates based program. And in
Yeah.
physio, we go deeper than that. We go deeper than just what we would say core stability. We look at neck strength. So if you're a runner or, with your job, Henry, you might find that you get very dominant through the back of your neck because you're kind of your head's down if you're working, and those muscles get tight. Your neck extensors get tight, but it can make your neck flexors a little bit weaker. And so we need to
Yes.
strengthen up the neck flexors through the front here so that, you get a good manly neck,
Yes.
a nice strong neck. But you can see that, if you overload the upper body and you don't have good, like lower limb strength, like there's good
Yeah.
research to show that if you improve your leg strength, it can increase your power output in your upper limbs by
Wow.
22%. There's like
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
good statistics about these kind of things. And that's why if you're working with tennis players, you don't just work on shoulder stability, you're looking at power through their legs and vice versa,
Yes.
because the two work together. So you're always looking at combining exercises together. So trying to maybe do an exercise, maybe standing on one leg, and you're doing some resisted weight work with either therabands or pulley machines or cable machines, to challenge your body beyond just standing with your feet planted and trying to, or, moving around. Often you'll see
Yes.
men kind of in the gym wavering around doing their exercises. And if you could just stabilize them and say, right, now lift that weight, you would find a lot of them would
Yes.
struggle because they're
Yeah. Yeah.
compensating in their spine or compensating in the
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
joints, and the load's not being channeled to the muscles
No.
correctly. So posture technique, and variety. So balance.
Yeah. That we.
Guys miss out the strength, like the stretching sometimes. And I don't want to be too generic in saying that, because I have some men in the clinic who come in and they're brilliant at doing a stretch program, but they might miss something else out. So we're always looking
Yeah.
at this
Yeah.
complete, circle of exercise and
That's the
what are
bit
they
that
missing out.
I definitely am a bit lax on the stretching. I will admit that. I think, yeah. And then obviously, if you do something too fast and now obviously I'm, suffering for it. So it's almost like I've had a whack on the back of the neck, but also that kind of metaphorical one of like, actually, I I know I should be stretching before doing exercise. Mm. And then you're like, oh, it's fine. I'll just, just crack on. It'll be okay. I got away with it last time. And then obviously now I didn't.
Yeah.
So hopefully I can learn my lesson to,
You can learn your lesson.
just,
Is there a reason why you miss the stretching out? Is there, because a lot of guys might sometimes say, well, they just didn't quite understand the importance of why stretching's so important because
I think,
your muscles. Sorry,
yeah,
Henry.
when I go to my exercise class, obviously there's a teacher there who knows his stuff, and so we always stretch at the beginning, and well, like kind of slowly warm up and some stretches and stuff, and then you don't hit into the hard stuff until probably 15-20 minutes of kind of so you are fully warmed up, and then obviously stretching at the end, and because there's someone telling me to do it, it's fine. Like you just do it because you're paying to be there. But then when I'm on my own, there's that bit of like, oh, I can't bother. I just skip that bit because I just I've only got 5 minutes. I'll get into it quick because I've got to be somewhere else. And but you kind of know, I know deep down that that's not, you know, it's probably the equivalent for me of like, I would always cook an onion properly, but then it's a bit like being, oh, I can't bother today. I'll just do it quickly, and then you eat them. You're like, they're a bit disappointing. So like, I do know that, and now, but I guess I've been able to get away with it, but obviously this week didn't get away with it, and it's been a constant pain in the neck reminder that
Totally.
actually I need to be a bit more conscious that maybe I'm not quite as young as oh, I don't know, like I have to be a bit more considerate about stuff, but then life's a lesson. It's all learning, isn't it?
It is. And I think if you can try and find maybe just 2 or 3 stretch sessions a week, maybe, because when you've had an injury, what you need to do is really try and get on top of that. And if we
Yes.
talk about, so there's some really lovely research that I remember covering in my master's degree as a physio about Cook and Purdam's theory on tendons and their recovery and how it's impacted and all the factors that influence it. And really stretching is really essential because if you stretch a muscle, you're going to realign all those muscle fibers, make them all nice and neat. I sort of imagine spaghetti. If you line up
Okay.
all your dry spaghetti and it's lovely and straight, then if it's in a lovely uniform pattern, you're going to be able to load that with much more tensile strength.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's kind of all jumbled around, imagine like
Yeah.
now cooked spaghetti and it's all kind of jumbled up on your plate, that's not going to be such good quality,
No.
and you're not going to be able to load that as well. And comes with that like the swelling if you're not taking the time to stretch in between sessions, or if you're loading yourself time and time again. So say if you're training for something and you'll often see men go, right, I'm going to go run every single day. And at certain ages, or if you've got a tendon problem or a muscle problem, it's not going to do you any favors to just keep going back to back. You need to allow time for recovery because we
Perfect. Yeah.
know
Yeah.
from physiological research that you need time for your tendons to actually lay down new protein and just repair themselves really nicely rather than
Yeah.
rush the process. Otherwise, the body goes,
Okay.
you're going to make me run again. And actually, I'm going to just fastly put down all these proteins. They're not going to be really well done. The matrix might not be so good. And then this is when you have a problem. So it's trying to spread out exercise, doing variety so that you kind of get that really nice combination and that you're not doing the same thing every single day or just one type of exercise back to back for your whole
Okay.
life. Like
Yes.
considering your bone density, because if guys are in the gym and they have had a history of doing whatever to try and build their muscles up in their youth, and I have had patients who they are now osteopenic because they have used steroids in the past or caused
Really. Yeah.
themselves
Yeah.
other health issues as a result of it. So that's not the only way to try and build muscle.
Is
You
that
need to
still
do.
like a big like steroids? Is that still? I mean, I kind of obviously I think about kind of your bodybuilders and I don't know, Arnold Schwarzenegger and those kind of things. But like, is it still like really prevalent steroids and stuff? Is that kind of do you see? Or was it all kind of like something of a bygone era? I don't know. I don't go to a bodybuilding gym, so like maybe I just don't see it. But is it something that you see in clinic quite a bit?
Yeah, so we see it from the sense that the generations that might have done that are obviously now we're seeing the effects of
The
having
fact,
done
yeah,
that in their
fine,
youth.
okay,
So we've
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
seen
yeah.
those bone density changes. The younger generations are better educated, and
Yes.
they're more into their health, and even with the whole sense of alcohol too. So
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
younger generation are being much better at not drinking alcohol, and being a much healthier generation, hopefully generally.
My nephew and nieces don't ever drink. It's like I
No,
kind
that's
of,
good.
that they're at uni, and you're like, what do you do? And they're just like, "I just, yeah, it's just fun." And maybe a bit of it is they're like, well, they know how expensive a pint is, and you're like, well, okay, yeah, fair enough. If I was going out, at their age and a pint was £6, it's quite hard to, drink 10 of them and spend 60 quid. Whereas when I was at university, it was a bit, or college, it was a bit cheaper. But,
Yeah.
but yeah, but I guess they've also seen, the older generation who have been smashing a bottle of red wine every night and thought, actually, maybe I don't want to be like that, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah, I think that is, and I think that's a sign of that's good that they're kind of trying to avoid some of the
Mm,
problems and the health issues that you're seeing in some of the our generation in particular. We know, just flipping to women's health just very quickly, we know that alcohol is one of the biggest risk factors for breast cancer,
is it?
rather than always just HRT, which was badly labeled as a reason for breast cancer. But
Okay.
we know that the impact of alcohol isn't great on the body in
Mm,
multiple senses. So it's trying to significantly reduce your consumption, if not consider eliminating it altogether
yeah.
if you possibly can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you have to also think about just your general health, and also from a man's perspective, the prostate. I then see the older generation coming through into the clinic, and a lot of them will be saying they've got either enlarged prostates or getting screened for or scares with prostate cancer,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
or we might be treating them for other musculoskeletal conditions alongside their diagnosis. And that's again something that men are often sort of coping with or dealing with. As well as sometimes as they get older, men will report to us in clinic a lot about getting up in the night to go to the loo, and
Okay.
they'll be quite concerned about how often they're getting up in the night. And we'll often say, 1 to 2 times a night getting up to go to loo is considered relatively normal. Any more than that, you should be looking at as to why that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it that
I'm
someone has had
I'm lucky.
alcohol?
My bladder's still quite good, so
Your
I
blood
can
is
I can power through. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
That's good.
So I have been getting up and doing stretches in the middle of the night when
Oh,
kind of
that's
getting
good.
stuck in a
That's good.
stuck in a position. Yeah. And
But
just
there is
on.
something.
Oh, sorry.
So I was just gonna, just while we talk about the bit about the urinating at night, which I know is not a great topic
Okay.
of someone's eating. But something to consider though is it is a common complaint in men, and they often don't know what to do. So if anyone's listening and
Okay.
they sort of think, okay, I'm too embarrassed to ask, or they don't see the
Yeah.
relevance
Yeah.
of it, you want to kind of look at trying to get your fluids in through the day, and not having too much liquid intake before going to bed, which can have an
Yeah.
impact. If you are obviously going to the loo frequently in the night, then we suggest that you talk to a doctor, because any frequency isn't a normal thing at night, especially if it's
So
problems
that's
urinating.
a bit of it's a flag to
It can
monitor.
be, yeah, yeah, potentially,
Okay.
especially if getting up a lot in the night goes alongside other symptoms. So things like fatigue, particularly if it's something like weight loss, issues with, ejaculation or erections and things like that for men, but also other symptoms like, are you struggling to pass urine? Like some men will say that they have the urge to go, but then they can't pass, or the flow rates changed. And this sort of, all
Okay.
these kind of things indicate there could be something going on with the prostate. So speaking to the GP, who routinely usually do a PSA check, and that's something that you'll get screened on, Henry, as you get older. It's your
Okay.
PSA level.
All
Have you
good.
ever come across that? Is there anything you've ever
No,
heard of
never.
before?
No, no, news to me. What is it?
So PSA levels are used. It's one of those things that's quite. It is used to kind of screen for prostate cancers, but it's not just the
Okay.
only thing that's used. It's quite a good first line check, but it's the accuracy of it sometimes can be influenced. the number can be influenced by other factors, which is why it has to
Okay.
be taken into consideration clinically with what else is going on, rather than just someone panicking, thinking, "Oh, I can't. I'm up more than 2 times a night, and I've got a raised PSA." You have to kind of look at the whole picture as to what's going on with someone. The PSA check is a number that's given to you after a blood test.
Okay.
Typically, it should be between 0 to 2.5, but if it's getting higher, particularly certain reference ranges for different age categories, that's when you might go on for further testing if it's elevated. And sometimes it can be impacted by things like infections. It might be that you have got a larger prostate, but there's nothing sinister going on. Sometimes, if
Okay.
the markers are very raised, but it's something as you get older as a man, it's something that it does start to become more of a regular test. So trying to keep healthy, we know
Yeah.
with guys with declining testosterone, we know that diet is really important.
Yes.
And you'll probably know this, Henry, anyway, but cooking tomatoes, did you know why that's so good for us? Is or not for us,
No,
but for guys?
no, no. Tell me. Tell me.
Yeah. So if you cook, it's considered that if you cook tomatoes, the lycopene that's produced when you cook tomatoes is supposed to have a really good effect, um, to reduce the risk of prostate cancer by being
Oh, right.
quite an
Wow.
antioxidant. And other food types, like you should really try and get
So
men should.
would tin tomatoes, would they count? Or I guess no, they've not been cooked, have they?
You'll
But yeah,
I mean, it can help, but you're better to try and cook the tomato best as best
let's
you
cook
can.
them.
So sort of putting it in the oven and cooking tomatoes just releases that lycopene. But I'm sure you probably
Amazing.
would get a little bit maybe from cooking tin tomatoes. The other thing is that you really want to get your like things like Brussels sprouts, broccoli, and cauliflower in. Though we know that
Okay.
those kind of vegetables are really good. They contain a particular product, if you want to call it that, like a substance, which I can never pronounce it, but it's something like sulforaphane. And that's again very protective in the body. Berries, Mediterranean diets, we know
Yes, that comes up
we
a lot.
haven't, it comes up a lot, doesn't it? Berries and Mediterranean diet. If you ever unsure what to eat, that's
Yeah.
one of the main things to eat. And we know that that's also important. Men are more likely to, we haven't talked about, as a condition coming up in other episodes, we might cover something like Parkinson's disease, and
Okay.
that's more prevalent in men. So we see
Okay.
more men will suffer with Parkinson's disease than females. So, but we know that if you eat your tomatoes and your, broccoli, sprouts, cauliflower, all your nice berries, green tea, that sort of thing. I think there's some links with pomegranate juice and other kind of healthy options, making sure you get enough protein. Zinc is also really important for guys,
Okay.
and vitamin D levels. So you can kind of really try and improve your general health,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
by looking at the food types and sort of trying to take that whole picture in for like a
And
nutritional size.
I guess that just feeds back into that, just trying to eat, you know, diet that's cooked from scratch with, where possible with good quality ingredients and just have plenty of variety because you're going to be hitting in some of those numbers. Because I guess it's if you pick up a broccoli, it doesn't always tell you what it's going to do for you. Maybe they should have prostate messages on broccoli. Maybe people would eat it more.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's lucky I don't work in marketing.
But the way you cook it is going to be important as well, Henry. And I know this is where you've got some really excellent opinions and obviously experience on what we should be using to cook, because you can
Yes.
buy all the good ingredients, but I know you were talking last time a little bit about what types of pans and things we should be
Oh,
using.
pans. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So tell me more about that. I'm really interested to hear what you've got to say
Well,
about this.
well, I guess a chef and their pans, obviously, if you do a lot of cooking, a good quality pan or a range of good quality pans is a must. And I think the kind of, having kind of worked in kitchens and then obviously, tried to source good equipment at home. I'm just kind of used to them. I hadn't ever really thought about it, but it's when people come over to my house, and quite often, if they, I try and get people involved and help out. And the one comment they always make is, "God, your pans are so heavy." And so I'm like, "Are they? They're just metal pans. Yeah, obviously they're going to be heavy." And it's then, I guess, when you go to other people's houses or like an Airbnb's, your classic, or like a self-catered place, and you pick up these pans and they're just like they're lightweight, they're flimsy, and they're they don't cook the ingredients well, but then also they often some of them, particularly the non-stick ones, have coatings and stuff that are not particularly good for you. I think some of the kind of Teflon ones, they've removed some of the kind of, I think, known carcinogenic properties. So maybe the new ones don't have it. But even so, quite often if they get a bit older and worn, they those bits of metal or whatever the protective coating is that stops the food sticking peels off, and that's coming into your food, and it's probably not ideal eating bits of metal or whatever the product is. It's probably not better in your body, better on the pan. And and I guess it's when you see people cooking with pans that are like either really scratched up and they're old and knackered, and you just think just like get rid of it. Like there's no point buying lovely produce and then cooking it in a battered old pan that needs to go in to the recycling tip. So anyway, so for me, when it comes to pans, there's like a couple of options that I kind of grew up or worked in some kitchens that had some beautiful copper pans. So I have a kind of soft spot for copper, but it is a bit high maintenance. They're like the kind of the diva of the pan world. To keep them shiny, you have to kind of buff them with a salty lemon a couple of times a week. Otherwise, they discolor and lose their shine, and they're not very
Salty
practical. And they
lemon,
also
did you say?
yeah, so the outside. So I worked for a period of time at the Le Gavroche, Michel Roux's restaurant in London. Is sadly shut actually. And one of the jobs that I had to do was buffing the pans, and you basically get half a lemon, and then you dip it into like coarse sea salt, and then you rub it on the outside of the copper, and it like takes it basically cleans it, and then you buff them again, and they go super shiny. But then as you cook with them, they lose that shine, and then you have to do it again the next day. It's a completely pointless task, but they're beautiful. So it's like having like a Bentley car and not keeping it clean. It's like what's the point of having it? Like you've got to keep it nice, but it requires the effort. But they don't. So I had these beautiful copper pans that I kind of accumulated throughout my younger years, but then I got an induction hob, and they don't work on induction. So they're now my camping pans, which is yeah. So it's like, well, I'm not going to throw them away because they're sentimental. So they now live in a box in the shed, and then we take them camping, which seems a bit excessive. But anyway, so what I'm left with is you got stainless steel or cast iron really, and some people are like a cast iron kind of person, and some people are a stainless steel. For me personally, I'm a bit of both. Like I actually, I do like a bit of cast iron. I do like a bit of stainless steel. Or I guess the middle one would be like a Le Creuset pot, which is a cast iron that has been enameled with, gives it a bit of protection and makes it a bit easier to clean. But I guess cast iron is a wonderful one. It requires a little bit of maintenance because the cast iron can go rusty. So you don't want to kind of if they get wet, you just want to dry them out, make sure they dry nicely. But the key with a cast iron is that once it heats up, it retains its heat really well, and it has a lovely that you don't really get hot spots so much like it. So it's a very nice surface to like fry in or cook things in. It's to make it non-stick, you have to season it. So if you get a new cast iron pan, and also this pan will last you forever. Like it's not like you buy it and you've got to replace it in 5 years. Like this thing, you can give it to your grandkids. It's a solid piece of metal that if you look after it, it will last forever. So it's a bit of an investment, but actually they're actually not that expensive. Like you can pick up a good one for, let's say, 40 quid, and that's going to last you for a lifetime. Whereas you
Really?
think like a kind of flimsy pan that you get from TK Maxx or something, it might cost 15 quid, but you got to chuck it away in 2 years' time because it's knackered or the handle's fallen off. So rubbish. Don't buy that stuff. And actually, don't buy one of those kind of like sets you see in the back of the newspapers. It's like £40, all kind of stacked. They're pointless. You can do most things with about a couple of frying pans, a few pots, and you can cook nice things at home. Like unless you're cooking you're in a restaurant, you don't need hundreds of pounds. Just get a few good quality ones, and they'll last you a lifetime. But with the cast iron, you need to season it. So what this means is the first time you heat it, you put some oil in, and then you basically heat it up to really high heat, and it kind of creates like I think that I'm going to get the word wrong, but it's like a patna. It's like a non-stick layer, which then when you cook your food in, it doesn't stick to the and then every time you use it, you just kind of wipe it out. You don't want to scrub it with a metal because that will remove it and you have to redo it. And essentially, you can just keep using that pan over and over again. I mean, I guess if you've cooked some mackerel in it and then you're going to be cooking an aubergine, you might want to give it a bit of a wash because it's gonna have a bit of mackerel flavor in it. But you know, with a bit of good hygiene, cast iron pan works is beautiful. But then on the other side, you've got stainless steel pans. Oh, sorry, yeah,
Yeah, I was just going to ask a question on the cast iron pan. So is
yeah.
that every time you have to heat the oil up to really
No,
quite
no,
high?
no, no, no. Just like you have to do it the first time, and then if you're using it regularly, and as long as it doesn't go rusty, so like, and so if so, in like a restaurant, if you're using a pan over and over and over again, and it's not being cleaned properly, you'll get a buildup of carbon, and then once in a while, you'll be like, right, we need to scrub and get rid of all of that. A bit like with your barbecue, you got to give it a right clean back to the basis. Then you need to re-season it, and I'd probably do that at home, maybe I don't know, once every 6 months or so. But if you're just cooking, using it in evening, you come in, you cook some onions and make a little sauce or whatever it is, just clean it out and just with like a natural brush or like one of those plastic brushes, just not like a metal scourer, and just give it a light wipe and then make sure it is dry and doesn't go back into the cupboard wet, because it will rust. And the next time you come to heat, you just put more oil in and heat the oil up, and that will naturally season it again. So it kind of builds that layer and it becomes that natural kind of
Like a
non-stick.
nice barrier. Yeah, is that kind
Yeah,
of like a
like a little
barrier?
like a barrier. It's like, and there's great stories, and this might appeal to you or really gross you out, but there's restaurants in, I think there's one in America and there's one in Mexico where they've never cleaned the pan ever. Like, so they're cooking whatever it is their dish and they've never cleaned it. They just like, wipe it out and reuse it again, and it kind of builds up this kind of history. It's probably a bit minging. I'm
Yeah,
not suggesting that you need to never clean your pan, but essentially if you look after it, it kind
you
of
really look
sorts
after
itself
it.
out. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And I assume you can
But
use any oil. Can you use any
yeah,
oil to do
totally.
that? Yeah.
Well, I'm a big fan of, kind of, olive oil or I actually really like tallow or which is beef fat, or coconut oil is a really good one for curries. Any oil that you can heat up to a high smoke point. So things like with olive oil, if you're like sweating onions and garlic and stuff, you're not, that's gonna be on like a medium heat, so that'd be totally fine. But if you're frying a steak, say for example, then you want something that can go a little bit higher. Extra virgin olive oil would burn at that temperature. I would use personally, I would use beef fat because it's, if you're cooking beef, cook it in beef fat. If you're cooking a pork chop, cook it in lard. And then also with the cast iron pan, because it naturally builds up this kind of non-stick. Actually, you don't need that much oil, so it kind of, particularly if you're cooking a piece of meat, as you kind of render the fat out of it. So whether it's in the skin or in that kind of, the edge of the steak that's got a bit of fat, you can start it on the fat side, and then that oil will naturally come out, and then that kind of creates your non-stick surface. And on the other side, you've got stainless steel. Now, stainless steel again, obviously it's a more modern steel. It's very easy to clean. Um, but you have to cook them slightly different, because if you say you've got a stainless steel pan, you heat it up, and you want a really heavy bottom one. So when you pick up a pan, give it a tap on the bottom. If it sounds hollow, get rid of it. You want to have at least, I don't know, uh, like £2 coins thick, like a decent base, because you want it to kind of get a lot of heat into there, and not kind of fluctuate when you put food in. You don't want to be putting your food into a pan that then loses that heat really quickly, because then you're going to get hot spots. And it's a pain in the butt. You're going to get inconsistent results. So a pan that's got some good weight to it will give you better results. But with stainless steel, you need to heat the pan up before you cook with it, because if you don't heat it up fully, everything sticks to it. So it's not like a so yeah, so so
Oh,
so it can punish you quite badly. So you need to you basically want to heat your pan up until it's almost smoking, and then you turn the pan down, put your oil in, and a good test is you can flick a bit of water, and if the water like bubbles and sizzles around and sounds kind of poppy, your pan's hot enough. Now you can turn it down, put your oil in, and once the heat's in the pan, it's much better to cook with. So say like your piece of fish, or say like a chicken breast, you put it skin side down into the pan. It's got nice and hot. You've now turned it down to a medium heat, because you're not trying to cook it. You don't want to burn it. You just want to get nice caramelization. You put a little bit of oil in there. You put your chicken in. What will then happen is in a cast iron pan or a non-stick pan, you can move that chicken around, it'll be fine because it has this non-stick. Whereas with stainless steel, it'll like glue itself to the pan, and you have to just relax and know what's going to happen is as the kind of proteins and the meat cooks in the pan, it will then release itself off, and so it will get all that lovely caramelization and color, and then it will release itself. So after like 2 or 3 minutes, you just take your tongs or your spatula and just start to lift, and if it feels like it's releasing, then it's fine. Flip it over. If it feels like it's sticking, just wait another minute and then flip it over, and it does release. And so, but I often see it with people with stainless steel pans is they're used to a cast iron pan or a non-stick pan. Normally they've come from non-stick, and they just try and like move it around, and then all that happens is you just get bits of chicken kind of like glued in different hot spots around the pan, which is not a good thing because you're leaving
Well, you have
your dinner
just
in.
described what I do, I think, Henry, there,
Oh,
and
fine. Okay.
especially
Okay.
we have got some stainless steel saucepans, which I think we probably got from Waitrose actually. And I love them. They still look as good as they did when we had them
Yeah.
from brand new. But I didn't realize you had to heat the pan first
Yeah. Yeah.
because that
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
explain why my porridge sticks every morning.
Yeah. Fine. Totally. Yeah. So you just have to
Pan hot.
heat it first, then let it cool down for a bit. It's just yeah, with the stainless steel that just helps. But yeah, like so I tend to have cast iron on the frying because I quite like cast iron pan, and then I have stainless steel for like pots and for if you're making like a risotto or a tomato sauce, like the stainless steel is perfect for that. And then I do have some like Le Creuset pans. Some of them official, some of them unofficial ones, but they're essentially a cast iron with an enamel. I think that's almost like glass. They kind of heat up. I think quite how they do it.
Oh,
Um,
right.
it's yeah. I think I think it's like a glass enameling. It's like very hot glass. They kind of I don't know how they do it. Actually, my cousins who live on the Isle of Wight have an enameling business, and they make all the enamel signs for the London Underground. I'll have to ask them how they enamel, but I think it's like glass. But yeah, anyway. But that again naturally is slightly non-stick, so um yeah, kind of works the same. But for me, pans, just avoid the ones that have any kind of like non-stick property because they are they're good when they're new, but then as soon as they start getting battered around a bit and that stuff starts peeling off, you just don't want to be eating that. And
They're not good.
even if it says it's now safe, I just think just don't bother. Just buy a good solid cast iron or stainless steel pan. It'll last your lifetime. And yeah, just you know use them properly, and they'll reward you.
Yeah. So, what can you use on an induction cooker then, Henry? I don't actually have one of these yet, but I'm quite
Yeah.
intrigued by
It,
them. What
it,
can we
it
use?
well, the way the induction works is it's like it creates like a magnetic field, or like so your pan basically has to have a magnetic metal in it. So cast iron is magnetic, you can stick a magnet to it, whereas not all, like aluminium isn't magnetic, copper isn't magnetic, so they don't work on induction. But you often on the bottom of the pan it will just have like a symbol and it have like induction ready. And so if you have an induction hob, you have to buy. Actually, I kind of have a bit of a love hate with my induction hob because it's very good because you can clean it, but I love fire. Like I like the kind of yeah. So kind of I would my ideal setup. I think I mentioned this before would be to have a couple of gas rings that I could have that kind of bit more drama. But then I have a
Get some
barbecue outside, so
flames.
I can have live fire outside. Yeah, flambeing. Yeah, flambeing with induction is ultimately totally disappointing because you pour your brandy in or your alcohol and you tilt the pan hoping for something to happen and it just steams. Whereas if you've got a bit of gas, you can get you can get some lovely flamage and makes the kids squeal and the wife thinks I'm impressive. Maybe if you're lucky, you set the fire alarm off. Obviously don't start a house fire. That's the kind of the theatrical person in me loves a bit of flambe. And induction hobs have ruined it for me. But they're very easy to clean, so it swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, I have wondered about these induction cookers actually. So so you can use stainless steel like the pans,
I
and
think
the
so. I think so. Yeah. Just check on the bottom. Just check on the bottom because some of the stainless steel ones won't be induction. ready. So you just have to. So basically, when we got our induction hob, that was the big disappointment. All of my copper pans don't work. And so they were ejected. But then like the Le Creuset did work. It was like, great, perfect. Well, we can still use them. So, and I didn't know that until we got it, because I hadn't really used induction before. So it was um, um, yeah, sometimes you learn the
Bit
hard
of
way.
a lesson there on the pans. Yeah, I think they did mention
Yeah,
that
yeah,
when
yeah.
we looked at one. I was like, oh, I don't actually know what we can use.
No, yeah, yeah, totally. But they are good. They are good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they do sound good. So what? Anything else? Kitchen utensil wise that you would say you have to have? What would you say as a chef that you can't live without, Henry?
Well, I mean, I guess knives, the obvious one. I think a good, again, like with the pans, just one or two good quality knives that you look after. Don't ever put them in the dishwasher. If you can't sharpen it, get friendly with your local butcher. Buy a few steaks off him or her, and then take them in, and they'll sharpen them for you because they'll quite often have either like a proper whetstone or a mechanical one. They'll be able to do it in a couple of minutes. Or learn how to. There's plenty of videos on YouTube how to sharpen it. But in terms of like, yeah, kit, I love my pestle and mortar. Um, and it's a proper, like, it's a really big heavy one, so it's like it probably weighs like, I don't know, like 3 kilos, and it's got like this big heavy pestle. And it means, if you're making curry paste or kind of grinding up spices, it's you know with a little bit of work, you can create a lot of friction and bash up those seeds. Whereas quite often you see them in these like little small crappy ones, and you're trying to bash up your coriander seed, and they're just flying everywhere. And then it's just like, no, you need a decent one. So like, and it feels very like, if we're gonna like make a curry, and you've toasted off the spices and you put them in, and then you start kind of grinding them. It gets you in the moment because you've got all these lovely kind of aromas kind of coming up, and makes the kitchen smell nice, and it gets you in the vibe of like, oh yeah, we're gonna make a nice curry now. So
Now
yeah, I
we're
like I
cooking.
like my pasta mortar. I don't know if it's an essential, but it certainly brings me plenty of joy. I
Yeah,
was I
I
was just
like
thinking
them.
about. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
thinking about a kind of a recipe for your dad bod, and I don't like. I guess there's probably not one recipe that's going to sort your dad bod out. But I was trying to think of a recipe for what your dads could eat that they might enjoy, and then on with the pan. So I was thinking, actually, if you've got yourself a good pan, then cooking a decent steak is a personal favorite of mine. If my wife ever says, "Oh, what do you fancy for dinner?" I'll quite often say steak, even if we're not going to have it. You gotta build yourself up for when you do have one.
Absolutely. Live a little.
Yes, totally. And obviously, not advocating that we should eat, loads and loads of red meat, but obviously, good quality grass-fed meat, it's got plenty of protein. If you are hitting the gym hard, it's important. But I thought, yeah, I'm a big fan of serving it with chimichurri, which is like an Argentinian, a bit like the salsa verde we had last week with the fish stew. This one is again, it's like a little kind of flavor booster, but it's built off lots of herbs and then some chili and then red wine vinegar and some olive oil and a bit of like oregano and stuff. And you chop it all up. I mean, you could actually do it in your pestle and mortar if you want. Bash it all around in there, and it just really cuts through the kind of the beefiness and it's a ribeye and it's got or rump and it's got plenty of fat in it. It just that kind of acidity really cuts through. And then serve it with I mean, I guess you could do chips or some sweet potato wedges or something like that, and maybe some broccoli. You could blanch the broccoli first and then just give it a little browning off in the pan after the steak. Get a bit of color on it. Which if you're not a fan of broccoli, I know people quite often have veg on their plate and then they just kind of leave it at the end because it's kind of blanched cabbage in unseasoned water with no kind of butter or anything on it is fairly dull. Whereas actually with things like broccoli or cabbage or whatever, actually, if you get a bit of caramelization on it, it brings out a lot more flavor. And then if it's basted in a little bit of whether it's the fat from the beef pan or just like a little bit of butter, it's going to be delicious. So you're going to getting the benefit of the veggies and they're going to taste nice.
So would you cut the broccoli and the cabbage quite small and then just chuck that in at the very, very end then, Henry? Or would you?
I would well, I'm quite a big fan of like big bits of broccoli and cabbage. So one of my favorite ways to cook uh, uh, a cabbage, and actually this probably works better, is to get like a kind of like a hispy cabbage or like a January King, or one of those kind of like pointy ones. You know, they got quite a kind of tight, not like a massive
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Savoy cabbage, more like a tight pointy one. Chop them into half or into wedges and kind of keep a bit on the stalk so it looks kind of quite kind of architectural. And then you can literally just put it kind of cut side down into your cast iron pan on a really high heat with just like a little bit of fat, so it can have a bit of the beef fat or a bit of olive oil or whatever. And you basically want to burn it, and you want to get loads of caramelization on it, and then you can turn it over and a knob of butter and some garlic, a bit of, some rosemary or a bit of thyme or whatever, kind of in the pan. Give it a bit of basting, plenty of seasoning, and then pop it in the oven with your sweet potato wedges for 10 minutes or so, and you've got this really kind of like kind of caramelized cabbage. And I cooked it for my father-in-law, and he's someone who definitely just pushes any kind of veg on his plate. He just like moves it around, and you're not eating it, Tony. You're just pushing it to the side, and then goes, "Oh, cool, I'm really full," and it's like he's left all of the veg. And I think he grew up on just like boiled veg in unseasoned water, and it's like, well, that sounds miserable. No wonder you don't like it. And so he had this cabbage, and he was like, "This is what have you done to it?" And I was just like, "Well, I've just cooked it nicely." Uh, um, yeah, that is if you're having a steak and you're kind of you're trying to embrace your dad bod, and you're thinking, oh, so that I won't have any veg. Actually, a bit of cabbage or some broccoli that's then been cooked, bit of color on it. That actually is delicious. And then with the chimichurri spooned over, because obviously you're going to have the you're going to have quite a lot of. You don't want it to feel too greasy, so actually you want something to kind of cut through, and or like a kind of nice mustardy dressing or something that just kind of cuts through the fat with that acidity, and it's just going to bring balance, and it's going to be delicious.
Sounds good. We'll be
Yeah,
round in an
and
hour.
obviously exactly. And make sure you have it with a non-alcoholic beer and rather than 4 pints of Guinness.
Plenty of water.
Yeah, and plenty
Exactly.
of water. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, plenty of water.
Well, that's brilliant, Henry. I'm actually going to really try those tricks with the pans if I can get my porridge not to sleep in the morning. Try that with the cabbage and the broccoli. That sounds great because I'm
Definitely,
probably the
definitely.
person that's unseasoned
Yeah,
in the
yeah, yeah.
boiled
Well,
water.
if you are boiling it, just make sure you put plenty of salt in your water. It'll make
Okay.
your veg delicious.
Yeah, I tend to steam it because there was that generation where we were told to steam our veg, weren't we? Because it was
Okay.
healthier. Do you
Yeah, yeah.
steam veg, or do you just do it in the ways that you've said because it's
No,
much tastier? You've got the know-how.
we've got one of those bamboo steamers, but it's on the other side of the kitchen. Yeah, it comes out occasionally if we do like dim sum or the kids have bao buns or something. But yeah, yeah. I find like broccoli, it takes like 20 minutes in there, whereas you kind of not normally a bit impatient.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, you're absolutely right because it does take a while because sometimes you've been cooking whatever else you're making, and then I go, oh no, I forgot to put the broccoli on. So actually, your
Yes,
method will not only save me time, it's
much
going to
quicker,
taste. Yeah,
much
I'm going to
better.
try that.
Exactly, exactly. Well, I'll write the recipe up and share it so then people can have a go.
Yeah, no, that's great, Henry. I think everyone will appreciate that. And yeah, just a reminder to those listening to follow us on Instagram and Facebook and all the different social media platforms. It's pretty much at the healthy bit. And give us a like and a follow and subscribe if you can, people, please.
Definitely. Thank you. Cheers, Hayley.
Oh, thanks very much, Henry. See you on the next episode.